Thank you, Doug. Thanks for those of you who were able to make it, and thanks for those who've decided to participate over the phone. You know, as Doug mentioned, and in my opening press conference, I said I wanted to have as open and transparent communication as we could, and I hope this is just a continuation of that and a reflection. You know, I'll just start for a moment and ask all of those in their own way to keep the thoughts of the Polster family in mind. Matt's grandfather passed away, and so, you know, on behalf of the club, we've expressed our condolences, and I know I've come to understand that Matt was very close to his grandfather. So if you would, please do that. You know, I think it would be disingenuous of me to begin today in any other place other than acknowledging our record. Sports is about winning and losing, and we don't shy away from that. The results are obviously not as we expected. Simply, it's not good enough yet. And for me, that's the key word. You know, winning and losing is the ultimate measure of sports, but it's not the only way to gauge progress. And it's my job to see beyond the results, to see beyond wins and losses, to ensure that the foundation that we are building and the process that we are following is on track. And I can't stress that enough, because sometimes you could be on a winning streak and believe that everything is fine when it really isn't, when the foundation is actually faulty. And I need to ensure that we're disciplined in our approach. You know, I didn't expect to be here, although we knew that there would be a point in time during the course of the year where results would not go our way. And, you know, it's one of the things I spoke to Pano about before the season even started, that how we handle those moments are going to be the real indicators of the type of team that we will become. And I've always tried to study sports teams, those that are successful and those that aren't, and try to draw references and educate myself. And in this instance, you know, one of the reference points that I look to is someone that I consider to be one of the best soccer coaches in the world, and that's Bob Bradley, who started his career here. And one of the lessons that I've learned by following Bob's career from time to time, I can't quite say I was inside, but I was close, is his focus on the environment and performance through the environment. And what does that mean? Well, for me, it means what we talked about again in October, which it's people, it's process, and it's focus. And I remain optimistic because I believe in the character of the men in our locker room. I think we have men of great integrity, men who have learned from their past and are learning daily, and men who will not yield to circumstance, who will not yield to what would be a natural creep of pessimism that would come about as the result of our start. And I feel strongly about that. You know, I look in the eyes of Eric Gehrig and I see a competitor. And I see someone who recognizes that every day he has his chance and he takes his chance. And I know that there will come a point in time where he'll be rewarded. See, a lot of people mistake the game as their chance. It's every day in training that's the chance, and the game is the reward. And I know and I believe that over the course of the season, you need everybody. And we've already started to demonstrate some of that with our approach and our willingness to play lots of different players. But it's not just Eric. You know, there's a lot of guys. You know, in a different way, it's Joey Calistri, who perhaps was our number one player coming out of preseason, had a few scattered minutes early in the year, then went dark, and then reemerged against Vancouver. Had a really wonderful match, and perhaps a bit unlucky not to finish one of two clear chances. But there's a young player, a rookie pro, who is learning what it is to compete. And I think that's incredibly important. I think David Accam has demonstrated new mental strength. You know, he could have easily have been frustrated by the injury he suffered, but instead he chose to work hard, rehabilitate, and again, when he got on the field, I think performed quite well. Unfortunately, I'll also break some news here. David has been suspended by the MLS Disciplinary Committee for Saturday, and so he won't be able to play. You know, I think it's important just to say that we don't believe David to be a dirty player in any way. He plays hard, for sure, and he competes hard. We accept the punishment, we accept the suspension, and we'll move on from it. And the other men in the room whom I have a great belief in is Pano and the staff. You know, they fuel me with belief and optimism. And so I have no doubts about those guys. But this period of time will be the true measure of whether I've assessed that character correctly or not, and how we come out of it. And that leads us to our process and how we move forward. Well, look, as I just mentioned, I believe we are learning how to compete on a daily basis. Admittedly, candidly, we have not made other teams suffer during the course of games, but we have not been an easy out. You know, there's only been 22 minutes the entire season that we've been down by 2 goals. 22 minutes. And I think 6 or 7 of those were the last few minutes of the New England game. So that also tells me that we're right there. We need to learn how to make a play. And I also reflect upon how we've been beaten. And, you know, from the first game, Tommy McNamara's opening goal was a golazo. Piatti's game winner was a golazo. Blas Perez, a bicycle kick in the 89th minute, doble golazo. And even Lee Wynn's first goal against us was a stroke of magic and a masterpiece. And so, you know, it's taken a lot to beat us. Now, again, that's not enough, but it does show me that we are progressing and that we are moving in the right direction. We are starting to forge our identity. It's not complete yet. You know, we have 9 players under the age of 23, 6 of whom play regular minutes for us. This is new. This is different. But I feel that we are growing. You know, Bill Parcells has a great line: blame nobody, expect nothing, and do something. And I believe that's where we've been so far. We've blamed nobody. We expect nothing to be given to us. And we need to do more. We need to do more on the training field. We need to do more in preparation and in recovery. Everybody in the soccer operations staff needs to give more. Not take, but give more. And I believe our attitude is such that we will. So people, process, and focus. And here I think we've done an outstanding job. We have not looked beyond our next opponent at any time. And we are fully concentrated on the opportunity that Houston gives us to start a positive streak. And I think the coaches are very good in that. I think they're very good in keeping the players in the moment. And I believe that those are key ingredients to really help us move forward and become successful. With that, I'll close kind of my opening remarks and happy to field questions.
Guillermo, Why don't we start off with you? We can work our way around the table.
I'll just go one at a time then, so not to hog everything. But Jim, talk about the process a little bit and the plan going forward. How much of that balance is needed between building and looking forward to the future and maybe that end of that 1 to 3 year span and having to win now? How do you balance that, and what are your expectations in that balance for the first year?
We owe our fans and we owe ourselves to try to win now. And we define competitiveness as being relentless in the pursuit of victory at all times, but not at all costs. So that balance is my job. It's not Pano's job. Pano's job is 3 points on Saturday. He's very clear about that, and he understands that. But it's my job to ensure that what we build is sustainable. And that's the part of the future that I try to keep in mind, is not to construct something for a fleeting moment of success, but to build something that will be sustainable. And, so far, Pano and I have been in very strong agreement on all critical matters and most matters in general. That won't always be the case, and there will be times where I'll need to learn to bend and give him something that he needs today that I might otherwise feel differently on. But overall, it's my duty to ensure that I set us up for sustained success.
Is there a point at all where you'll sit down with Pano and say, okay, there are guys who may not be here at the end of that window, that 1 to 3 year plan, so to speak, that will need to take a bench in lieu of a younger player who will be here at the end of that 3-4 year cycle?
No, at the present moment, I don't ever envision myself telling the coaching staff whom to play and who not to play. They're hired to coach the team. They're hired to make those decisions, and I'm hired to evaluate that. Pano and I have a great working relationship, where we confer on most matters. He seeks my soccer opinion from time to time. He seeks my counsel on different issues. He's very self-aware. Despite having played in the league, despite having lived in the U.S. for a short period of time, he's willing to recognize those moments where he says, help me out here. Make sure that I'm understanding a situation correctly, or how can I better understand something. So inevitably, there will be change. There always is. I can't think of a champion in any sport that returned the following year with everybody intact. Every coach intact, every support staff intact, every player intact. So there will be inevitable change. Right now, the key is ensuring that we identify, attract, and keep, and then cultivate those that we believe have the same mentality that we do and that we need. That competitive, relentless drive to win and compete.
Dan, do you want to go next?
Sure. I know you mentioned a couple times before about scouting being something that the team struggled with when you took over, that you noticed that. How's that coming along? And I think you mentioned something about the summer before.
Yeah.
It's kind of a deadline or a goal. How is that coming along for you?
I think we're slowly getting better. Matt Pearson has been given more time, and he's settling in, and we're building a database. It's a reason why we worked really hard to try to make our summer acquisitions, if you will, earlier in the year. Now, one of those went well when we were able to secure Holly Cham in advance, and the other one didn't quite go the way we hoped. Michael DeLiu now will have to join us on the 4th of July. We had made a significant transfer offer back in April, perhaps even late March, I'd have to check the date, for his services. The club, FC Groningen, believed he was too key of a player for them. They had just lost Johan to us, and didn't want to lose a key player both from the back line and the front line. And so then we were left to the mercy of results that went against us. So that was the reason we wanted to front load our signings and take advantage there, have them incorporated well before other teams brought in their reinforcements. As I look forward now, I'd like to, unless some special opportunity arises, which we are still capable of incorporating through budget and all of our other MLS means, I would prefer we skip the summer window so that we can really be identifying and tracking players of interest to incorporate in January. And, we are internally working on that list, those positional requirements and those characteristics that we seek.
And with Deliu, how does that work with the visa process? You can't sign the contract until July?
No, his contract is signed.
Oh, it is signed. Okay.
And we've already undergone the start of his visa process. Okay. While he can't compete before the 4th of July, we expect his arrival to be in early June, where he'll have, we've already been in touch with him, we've already been discussing a recovery plan for him, as well as the beginnings of a new fitness plan, so that when he does join us and begins training with the club, he'll be ready to step on the field in early July.
Okay. Last thing before we move past me, but you had your academy director leave in the off season. Is that going to be filled? Have you made any progress with that?
It will be filled. I don't know if we'll call it an academy director or not. I've spent, I'd say, the last 6 weeks speaking to people around the world to try to get some ideas and some names of people in whom we should have interest. I think that the academy has always had a great reputation. I believe we've already done a better job of starting to integrate the academy into our first team. I think having Logan as our PDL coach is another example of that, because it was interesting. The PDL starts its season tomorrow, and I went to watch Logan run the team through the session, and then I came to the stadium field to watch our team prepare, and they were doing the exact same things. And I think that integration is really important, and seeing some of our academy players on a regular basis training with our first team is important. As I said, for the coach hire, this is a very important position, and so I'd rather get it right than get it fast. The staff has done a great job. The academy staff has done a great job of keeping things going in a positive way, but I'm interested in making sure that what we build and develop complements what we're doing on the first team, serves as a link to the Fire Juniors program, which will be the next piece of the soccer puzzle that I start to look at. And, I'd like to think that we'll have someone in place early when the academy resumes its new season, August, September.
You good? Yep. Jeff Krause, Fire Confidential.
Nelson, you talked about still being pretty quiet in the summer window, but earlier in the season, when you were kind of talking about the same thing, one of the things that you had mentioned was having a core of players on the roster that you could kind of build around. How much closer is the team to that now, and do you think that you have that core group of players on the roster, or is it something that you're still building?
No, it's far too early to make that assessment, Jeff. We are only 10 games in. I think players need more time to adapt and to adjust to the particular demands that we're making on them. I think Pano and the staff still need time to adjust to the team, to the league, to the culture and everything else. It's a fluid process. Certainly, and I don't want to overstate it or give anyone a false impression, but you can start to make some general assumptions, right? For me, Kembeloff is a good one. that pairing between Jonathan and Johan, is suggesting, only having played together 9 games, is suggesting that could be, a winning duo. Now, there's a lot of road to cover, and Jonathan's a very young player who we didn't necessarily even want to put into this position so early in his career. And Johan, although an experienced player, is new to the league and learning that, by golly, there's a lot of good forwards in this league, and they're very different from week to week in how to play them. But using them as an example, that could be something that, we could feel pretty good about. Maybe we get to the end of the year and they've played together 25, 30 times, and we say, okay, we've got something there, and we can build off that. But it's still premature for those two or for anyone to think we have it.
What, you started out by referencing the record and what the team's done up to this point. Has that changed your expectations for this season any? And what are kind of your expectations now? Looking at now basically a third of the season is over. What are your expectations for 2016?
My expectations are unchanged. And again, we knew every team in this league runs into this patch where they don't get a win, right? They might get some ties or have an unfortunate string of losses. It's magnified because it's the start of the season. It's exacerbated by the fact that we are trying to do something a little bit differently with a new group. And by a new group, I don't just mean a new coaching staff. I mean a new group in the locker room. So it would be foolish for me not to recognize for myself that doesn't make it more challenging, because it does. Look, New York City Football Club hadn't won any of their first 4 or 5 home games, and there were some people already. And then bang, 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 they stayed true to what they're trying to do. They stayed true to the identity they're trying to develop. They got a couple of results, and then now they've strung that together, and I think they're tied for first place in the East. My expectations remain the same. My expectations are that when we hit October, we are competing for a playoff spot, that we are playing meaningful games in October. And that's the same message I delivered to our ownership group when I met with them last week in Los Angeles. And it's the same message that Pano believes. There is still no reason for us not to triumph. It's just a matter of staying together, continuing the hard work, and going back from that Parcells quote, do something more. We need to learn to make one more play in a game to push us over the top.
Just one more question before I pass it over to Dan. As far as MLS scheduling, the team had basically 3 bye weeks in the early going. Now you're looking at a stretch of 4 games in, 11 days?
11 days, yeah.
How much control does the club have over that? And, how are they able to work with the league in that to try to avoid that? Because it seems like that's an ongoing scheduling issue, from year to year. And, is that something that the club has say in, or is it basically the league scheduling saying, here it is, and this is what it is?
Well, when I was at the league for the last 4 years of my run, scheduling also fell under my purview. And it would take a little bit of time to explain how complex it is to put that together. Clubs can volunteer preferred home dates, and clubs can volunteer blackout dates where their home facility isn't available. From that point on, it rests with the league. But it is very, very difficult. For sure, it's not ideal to have the type of schedule that we've had. But no excuses. Again, every team's going to have some similar stretch, or every team's going to have their moments in the schedule where they feel aggrieved. It's about adapting and overcoming. On the flip side, it gave us more time to train, which for a new group and getting together and trying as versatile and as adaptable as we try to be, that has actually been a little bit helpful. A regular steady diet of games is also helpful because you get into a rhythm and a routine. I would say 4 games in 11 days is not that, but it'll flatten out, it'll even out. You know, we're going to go dark again in 2 weeks when the league takes a break for Copa America, but we'll use that as an opportunity to have a second preseason. We'll use that as an opportunity to further inculcate Cham and Michael DeLeo, and we'll use it to our advantage.
Thank you, Jeff. Dan Kelly, CSN Chicago.
Nelson, you know, the fans, broadcasters, everyone can at times get emotional. Now that you're facing live bullets again and in charge of a team and there's wins and losses, do you get emotional, after games, or do you have to catch yourself at times?
Look, I am passionate by nature. It is different. I've coached in my past, and I think as a coach, I was able to remain in the moment and stay unemotional. Not lose my passion, but stay unemotional and clear thinking. This is a different beast. My emotion right now comes from there's a great group of men in that locker room who are really digging in, and we have just not found the way to reward ourselves. And now part of my job is to ensure that it's natural. It's natural from the media, although I think the media has been quite fair. It's natural from the fans, although I think the fans have been quite patient. It's natural from the players for some degree of pessimism to creep in. Oh no, is this another fire year like it's been 5 out of the last 6? No, it isn't. But saying that is not enough, right? And we ultimately will need to find a way to make that one more play that will turn some of those losses to ties and some of those ties to win. But I believe that we're close. I want to be clear here. We're not close to being a finished product. We're not close to finishing the designs of our championship program, but we're close to not being the only team that suffers after 90 minutes and having some other people suffer instead.
You good, Dan?
I guess just one more. What did you? It's been an impressive year for despite the struggles from Jonathan Campbell. Just his character and when your dealings with him and you drafted him and brought him to the team. What was your impressions of him as a man?
When we drafted him, I went to his parents and I said, I have 2 daughters. I said, I hope my daughters find a son like yours. He is respectful, self-aware, intelligent. He is multifaceted. He has a lot of interests. And what I love about him as a player is that he does not let a mistake bring him down. So, young players are going to make mistakes, and Jonathan has made some. But I've not seen one mistake then lead to a batch or a series of mistakes in the same game. He is very able to brush it off, remain in the moment, and make the next play. That type of trait, I think, is essential for that position and is one that, again, gives me confidence in, how we're identifying and recruiting people. And I think it will serve him well as a player. The other quick thing I'll say about Jonathan was, and he might be embarrassed by this, but when we interviewed him, he said, he didn't study soccer a lot. And that has changed. He's asking Pano for more videos, for more players to emulate. Pano has told him that he should watch Matt Beasler and try to copy his game a bit. And you know that Pano feels strongly about his future potential. But even there, we haven't noticed any change in Jonathan's approach to training or games, even though he's gotten some flattering commentary, whether it be from the staff, from fans, from the media, and from opponents. Very level-headed.
Good?
Yeah, thank you.
All right, John Wilkinson, Soccer by Odds.
You know, the defense has obviously been one of the key points, or, you know, highlights the growth that they've come along. And then, you know, you sign Michael. Do you think that that's enough up front? You know, do you guys see that you have the players to make those 1 or 2 plays a game up front? You know, I know Pano's talked about needing Gilberto to start chipping in at some point, and you know, you've been without David so much, you know, and he's talked about finding, you know, goals through the run of play and turning defense into offense. But do you feel like you guys have the players on the roster to score enough goals at this point?
I do. Look, this team scored a lot of goals last year. One thing that we have to keep in mind is, by way of example, David and Gilberto have played together 45 minutes. The first 45 minutes of the season. They haven't played together since then, if I'm not mistaken. And so they complement each other very well. Kennedy has stepped up and is producing, honestly, at a level that we expected. I thought Kennedy would experience a good run with the way Pano wants to play and how he's been utilized. We need more. But it's not limited to just attack. Possession can help in attack. Pressing can help. To press more, you need to be able to possess more. You need to be able to possess higher up in the field. All of these things are interconnected. So, you know, we believe that Cham will help us with possession, will help us with an aerial game. He needs time. And so, you know, when I look at the last game, as an example, the Red Bull game, that may have been the first game where we outshot our opponent. And I know that they had a lot of statistical possession, particularly in the first half, but I don't think it was a very difficult game for Sean Johnson at all. Now, we have to do better, you know, when in the limited opportunities that we've created, we have to do better. But again, that's that fine line, right? The first good chance in the Vancouver game is Calistris. That goes in. I'm not saying we win and we win 4-0, but the game is different. The tenor of the game is different. Our attitude is different. So even just scoring the first goal will help us. We obviously believe Michael will help us a great deal. He's a proven goal scorer who's hungry for that. We've seen already through the 45 minutes that David played in New England and the 60-plus minutes he played at Red Bull that he is a menace for other teams, and it forces them to play, to treat us differently and play differently. We're able to press higher up the field in that second half and change the complexion and the look of that game. So we've got to get our guys on the field. We've got to get them on the field together. We need to give them time. We need to help them. And if we can make further additions that we think will improve our team, we will do that.
You know, and then you talked about seeing the long view and not seeing too much pessimism. Have you seen signs of that, or do you feel like the group, you know, is at least on the inside relatively confident that this isn't, you know, despite a bad 10-game start, that it's just a rough patch and that they're moving in the right direction?
So this is where I think my honesty and transparency sometimes get me into trouble, and I should learn my lesson, but I'll put myself into trouble. The group remains committed, and the group continues to have belief. I wouldn't say confident, though, because confidence is aided by success, right? And we haven't had enough success. So that's why I keep saying we need to make a play. We need someone to step up and either finish the expected, so any one of those chances where we think this is it, or give us the unexpected, whether that be an unbelievable save, a game-saving tackle, a clearance off the line, or a finish and a goal. And I think that once we get that spark, and once we experience success again, then I think we stand the chance of building more sustainable momentum. The group is committed to each other. I'll say it again, that's a good group of men in there. And what we need now is either the collective to step forward again and will us to another rung on the ladder, or someone to drag the rest of the group. And this is comments that I've made previously. This is where there are very special leaders in sport. And I don't believe that this is a criticism of the guys in our locker room, but there's not a lot of guys like Marc Messier. They just aren't. And they're not easy to find. And when you find them, they're not easy to get. Why? Because no one wants to give them up. But we can do it through a collective experience. I think we have the right collective in there. And when we get it, when we get that spark, I think more confidence will emerge. And I believe you will see improved play as a result.
All set. Great. Jeff Forba, the reporter.
Just looking at the conference, is it kind of make you happy to look at nobody's really running away with it and seeing how, I mean, if you guys get 2 wins and 6 points, I mean, is that how you guys are kind of looking at still up for grabs?
It isn't. We're looking at 3 points. We're looking at Saturday, and this is the focus that is important. Well-meaning family members, well-meaning friends talk to me about all our games in hand and all that stuff, but they don't mean anything if you don't win the game in front of you. So we need to remain focused right now on Houston and secure those 3 points. What I do believe, again, is there's not a game on the schedule that we look at and don't believe we can't win. And, I remember when I was the head coach at Lafayette College sitting down with our team my first season as a head coach, and we did a goal-setting session. And I said, is it realistic for us to be 20-0? And Lafayette College is good students there, and they said, no, coach, it isn't. I said, right. And then I went game by game on the schedule. Can we beat Houston? Yes. Can we beat Portland? Yes. And so on and so on. No, it's not realistic to go 20-0, but it is realistic to go 1-0 20 times. And that's how we look at it. That's how we look at the balance of the season. We have an opportunity Saturday to win a game and gain 3 points and take a step forward. And that's where our focus is. It doesn't hurt that the Eastern Conference teams keep tying each other.
And you had a situation in the Vancouver game where a player got hurt and 3 guys came around him and kind of came to his aid. Does that kind of go to what you were saying about character of the team?
I do. Look, I think any player on any team would have done that in that moment. So I don't necessarily believe that Razvan and our guys were any more special than any other. That's the code. That's the brethren of being an athlete. But I do like that we are not making excuses about anything. We're looking in the mirror. We're looking inward. We need to find the solutions ourselves. We need to create the solutions ourselves. That character I'm proud of.
You all set?
I'm good.
All right, we're going to go to the phone lines. Oren Schwartz, Daily Herald.
Hi, no, again, I apologize for I can't be there in person. Just wondering, sort of along the lines of Jeff's question, do you see Saturday's game against Houston as a must-win just for the spirit of the team and the spirit of the fans?
No, I hope not. I hope not. It's, must win to me is when you're facing elimination in playoffs, right? That's sports vernacular. That to me is the only must win game. A win would help. A loss makes it more difficult. I can't deny those things. But it's not must win.
And was there any thought to give it to trading Sean Johnson?
No. There have been teams that have inquired about Sean, and there have been teams that have inquired about other players on our team. I think that this experience is going to prove to be great for Sean. And I don't know how it was in the past, but one of the things that we've tried to impress upon our group is that your chance is every day. And just because you played Wednesday does not mean you're playing Saturday. Just because you didn't play Wednesday doesn't mean you won't play Saturday. So look at Nick LaBrocca. He wasn't even in the 18 for the New England game, but then he came and gave us great minutes on Wednesday at Red Bull. I know this is different for a lot of guys. I know that in general you kind of slide into a pecking order and your roles are defined. We are not subscribing to that. We are subscribing to, because we look at it as a per game basis, who gives us the best chance to win this game tomorrow against Saturday. And it's each player's responsibility to be ready, because they don't know when they're being called. And that's intentional by Pano. He doesn't want guys to be comfortable on either side of that. We want to stretch the comfort zone. And I actually believe that this will prove to be, and is bearing out into forging our identity, and will be an advantage. Next man up. And our next man is ready. I think we've gotten good performances from a lot of guys who perhaps didn't play for 2 or 3 games and then were called upon, or who have had similar roles.
Does that mean that Sean was benched just to send that message to the team?
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. No one was benched. Matt Lampson earned it in the eyes of the coaches. He earned it and he kept it. Sean earned the opportunity on Wednesday by how he performed in the trainings that led to the decision for Wednesday. Tomorrow's starter will be earned by how the coaches have felt Wednesday's game went. Of course, it's always part of the equation. Thursday's training went. Today's training went, and what the game plan is for tomorrow. It is earned on a daily basis. It is not given, and it is earned on the field. It is. There's no other way to earn it but on the field.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Oren. Shane Murray?
Hi, Nelson.
Hi, Shane.
Just looking at everything you've seen from Pano thus far, has everything you've seen from him reinforced your opinion that he is the right man to restore success to the Fire?
Absolutely. I still think we're in the midst of, and this is too much pressure, but of a great coach at the start of a great career. I love that he is willing to stand up and say, I got something wrong, and admit that to the team, and not be threatened by it or weakened by it. I love that he remains focused on the next game and the next result. I like that he continues to seek input and to learn. And I like that he remains convicted to our principles and values.
And just given the lack of shots, goals, and general lack of a threat in the attack, are there any regrets about the decision to not keep the likes of Mike McGee, Harry Shipp, Patrick Nyarko?
No. First, I don't believe in regret. And I say that sincerely. I think it's a wasted emotion. I believe in learning from mistakes. I believe in learning from the past and from history. I like the group of guys we have. The decisions that we took were taken knowing what it meant and what it means for the future. We don't begrudge any of those guys. In fact, we want other people to have success. We don't measure ourselves by what they're doing. We measure ourselves by what we're doing.
Okay, thanks for knowing.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Shane. Paul Tenorio, 442, I know you're at the airport. Are you still with us?
Yeah, I'm still here recording in a minute, so. Nelson, you spoke about the kind of idea of game-to-game play and earning that opportunity. Do you feel satisfied with the idea of kind of changing the way you play based on the teams, or do you think that there's still kind of part of the process of figuring out how you want to play?
No, we believe, as we've said, in adaptability. And adaptability does not necessarily mean reactive to what the other team may do. Adaptability can be proactive as to how we will look to play. So for me, a good example is, again, let's just look at the last game. We sat in, we surrendered possession. I don't think everyone has their view. I don't think we really surrendered threatening chances at goal. And then in the second half, we took a completely different posture. Now, I'm not about to say we took over the game, but the game was different in the second half. And again, I think our ability to switch from one way to another, and those two approaches take two very different mindsets, I think bodes well for the future.
I know you said you're planning on focusing as far as transfers on the January window. What kind of preparation can you do during the summer window to set up moves for January?
Well, first it's with identifying targets. You know, who are the players that we see or that are recommended to us that as players seem to suggest the characteristics that we're looking for. Once we have that list, now it's about going and seeing them in their environment. How do they train? How do they play? And then wherein there's not the risk of tampering or there's not actual tampering, learning about the player as a person. Because who we bring in as a person matters to us. It's very important. It's a critical part of our recruitment process. So speaking to people who know those players individually, who know their history, that's the type of work that we're trying to do so that when the leagues around the world resume in August and September, we're in their backyard studying the players as players and learning them as people firsthand.
Has Bono talked to you about what maybe he's learned through the first 10 or 12 games this season about the league and the travel and the level of play and style of the different teams, et cetera?
Yeah, we have conversations about that. I don't think he's been surprised by anything, really. I think it's been as he imagined. He also still believes in our group, in our team, in our opportunity to achieve what we set out to achieve this year. And he loves it, and he loves the challenge. So he remains enthusiastic and invigorated.
Thank you.
Thanks, Paul.
Thank you, Paul. We have our last caller on the phone, Colin Stevenson from MLSsoccer.com, and then we will open it up to the floor.
Yes, hi, thank you. Nelson, I'm curious about Leo. Where do you see him fitting in? What do you expect him to provide? And do you worry that there might be pressure on him to be some sort of savior when he does join you?
Well, we expect and are looking for him to provide goals. I think that concern about savior is a fair one. But Michael has a healthy ego and attitude, so he might relish that a little bit as well. We see Michael as having the ability to play any one of the front four positions if we stay in a 4-2-3-1. We will look to see whether it makes sense for us to change that alignment to take more advantage of how he might play, whether it be with Kennedy or Gilberto or with David or with Joey or with Alex Morel or any of our attacking players. But whether he slides as a traditional forward, plays underneath, maybe even shades outside, we think he can help in any of those roles.
Thank you.
Thank you, Colin. Folks, we're going to open it up to the table. If you have a question in an orderly fashion, please go ahead and ask Nelson a question.
You mentioned in a recent interview that you now recognize that maybe you need a veteran presence, or maybe a big name for lack of a better term, and maybe sort of a real captain. What did you mean by those comments? And as far as the veteran presence and the captain, is that you kind of alluded to it earlier, being looking for players in the next window, but what did that exactly mean?
Yeah, look, first I think you have to allow a team time to take shape and see how the relationships form, and is there an emergence of a leader or not. But again, I think that there are certain individuals, it's their nature as people, their ability to influence and drive that is different. It's not to say that we don't have leaders, but there are levels of leadership. There's levels of respect. There's different forms of leadership. There are those who lead strictly by example. There are those who lead by a kind word. There are those that lead by a bollocksing. And so one of the ingredients that we feel we could add to the locker room to give it a proper mosaic is some spice. You know, someone who perhaps isn't always politically correct, someone who isn't always dutiful. And for sure, there are potential issues that come with that. You have to manage that. You have to manage that in the group setting. Pana would have to manage that. But again, I think that we have a very good group. That group has the ability to take itself forward. But we recognize that maybe just adding a dash of sriracha sauce in there might actually help. Does that answer your question? Okay.
Well, I want to ask, you know, that there's been a lot of talk about more expansion in the Midwest, Detroit and St. Louis among cities. Obviously, Minnesota's coming in. How do you think that affects the Fire? Maybe getting a new rival or two or three or whatever?
It'll be great because I have to imagine the schedule will change, and then if it's 4 games in 11 days and we're just going to St. Louis and Detroit, it's a lot easier than going Vancouver to New England. Look, the growth of the league is phenomenal, and you know we will be excited to go into those new markets because we know that we'll be met with fans who will be inclined to hate Chicago because Chicago's a great sports town, because we carry with us the tradition of 6 trophies in our cabinet, and we also carry with us the reputation of Chicago sports in general. So, looking forward to it. I think it's a wonderful thing. There are some cities I haven't been to, so I hope to stay in the job and visit those cities.
This year, the naming rights for the stadium are up. They expire. Is there any talk of continuing the naming rights with Toyota, or is there other negotiations going on as far as naming the stadium?
My understanding is that the Village of Bridgeview owns and manages the stadium, so I believe that's their purview and decision, and it's certainly not soccer related, so we have enough to work on.
Have you gone about revisiting the potential for a USL side at some point? You know, we talked earlier this year, and they were still in the process of kind of looking at.
We do have those internal discussions. We also have groups that have reached out to us. We have a great partnership right now with St. Louis, though. Again, I don't know how it was last year, but it's been great for us this year. St. Louis has been very helpful with our players, with our requests. We have weekly dialogue with them. You know, Matt Pearson went down last week to watch Drew Connor play, and we're keeping close tabs on him. Sarke, our goalkeeper coach, went to watch Drew play and then went to watch Patrick McLean play as well. So I'm not in a rush there. Again, I know I'm bucking the trend a little bit, but if we can continue the relation and the benefits that we believe we're getting out of the relationship with St. Louis, and hopefully in turn they feel that they're receiving benefits too, that's working for us for the moment.
How did the team deal with the recent incident in the community that happened last month regarding the Habitat for Humanity and getting players out of that situation safely? Was there a thought of getting them out quicker, or there's a thought about how do you feel you dealt with that the way it should be done?
Yeah. First, I think it's important that we continue to contribute to the community. And I think Habitat for Humanity is a fantastic organization that is helping people have lives to the standard that we should all expect in the United States of America. And I'm proud of our guys for wanting to contribute to events like that. There were some unfortunate incidents in and around the area. We followed the protocol set forth by Habitat for Humanity, by CAPS, by Chicago PD in those situations. We were never in immediate danger as advised to us by those groups. Upon a second incident occurring, at that point, we made the decision to abort the balance of that appearance. We then followed protocol set forth by Chicago PD on how to leave those premises, and we did so without any further incident. It's important, though, and it's important to me that we demonstrate we're a learning organization. And so, there were elements that I think we as a club could have done better, communication elements. I admitted those to the team personally and up front. But we're to take that learning a step further. On Sunday, we're going to have soccer in the community. And we're going to go to another area where some might say there's a degree of risk. I think there's risk everywhere. And in Chicago these days, perhaps more so. But we shouldn't shy away from those opportunities to give. What we've learned from the previous community event, Guillermo, we've now put into place. So we've changed some security protocols, added some security, provided the guys with more information up front to try to give them more comfort level. And again, I think what happened was unfortunate, unique. I wouldn't wish it upon anyone to have to experience, but it can't deter us from one of our core values and core principles, which is to be a good neighbor.
So forget the fire for a second. Like if you've been in the league for a long time, if you had like an expansion team or a blank roster or whatever, what do you think the designated player focus would be like? What are the positions you want to build a team around in this league?
I believe that the designated players have to make a difference. They have to be difference makers. And so to me, in our sport, that means the creation and the finalization of goals. That's not to say you can't go away from that, and you can't get a playmaker, or you can't get a defensive midfielder, or you can't get a stud center back. I'm not saying that, because it does matter, the team, the circumstance, and everything else. But in general, that's how I view it. Okay. And I'll just repeat what I said, I think, back in October. The DP needs to finish the puzzle, not start it.
Right. What have your conversations with Andrew Hoffman been like so far this year? Is he accepting of the process or the slow start? And how patient do you think he's going to be with results?
He's a proud man, and his family is proud, and they suffer when the team loses on a personal level. You know, the Andel as a company is accustomed to success, and this is why I think he's a great owner. I think he asks really good questions. I think he prods and pokes and wants to know that there are contingencies. I also think that he has handled all of our requests reasonably. And so one request was we asked for a charter flight following the Red Bull game after the 3 games in 8 days. And we gave him a rationale for why, and then he approved it. And I think that's the way it should be. He wants to win, you know, and I don't think he is sparing expense against that. I think the choices and the decisions that have come have all been well-meaning, and they haven't worked. I don't know why that's a reflection of him. If the players that we bring in don't work, that's a reflection of me and Pano. Those are the choices that we are making. Those are the things that we're asking for, right? If someone wants to say, you should have taken the charter from Vancouver to New England instead of New York, that's a choice we made. That's a decision we made. That's what we thought was the best choice to make. That's not Andrew Houtman. That's us. Look, is he disappointed in 1 win in the first 10 games? Yeah, you bet he is. What keeps him okay with it is that I communicate in advance. I say, this is where I think we are. This is where I think we're going. When things don't go as I've diagrammed, I think he appreciates that we don't give excuses, but that we give not only reasons, but corrective measures. How are we going to fix this? So, by way of example, early in March, I said to him, I think we need help in the attack. You know, I'll use as an example, the very first game of the year, the story was the defense. Everybody wanted to blame the defense. And honestly, for me, it was the offense that failed us in the first game of the year. We should have scored 6 or 7. It wasn't about the 4 we gave up. It's about the 4 we didn't score that we should have scored. And so we said to him, here's our plan. And we targeted Michael. And we targeted to have Michael now, quite frankly, May 10th, okay? Because the season ended May 8th, and we were going to let him have a day to salute the fans and come here. And we gave him the path. And it didn't happen. Now, in that, I always let him know, hey, they've rejected our transfer offer, and there's a chance that Groningen gets on a run and goes from 10th to 8th, and the other results conspire against us, and we don't have until July 4th. He accepts that because he knew, because we laid it out that way. Now, he also said, are there other alternatives to Michael? Is there someone else that we could get ahead of time? But we think that Michael's complete mix as a person and as a player were the right ones for us. And so rather than try to fix something, we want to build something. So we remained patient with Michael, and he remained patient with us. And for me, that's a great owner. One that I prefer to work for than someone who either wants to micromanage, which he doesn't, or wants to second guess every decision that we make, which he doesn't.
You talked about the scouting network earlier. Anybody who's been around the league knows that the Fire's signings from abroad over the last several seasons have been somewhat hit or miss. How long do you give what you're establishing as far on the scouting side how long do you give that, and what kind of success rate do you look for when it comes to bringing in guys like Tiam or like Delu?
Well, those, just very quickly, Jeff, those two players are very different, and they're at different places
Sure.
in their life cycles as players. So Cham is, he's still very young. He's still very formative. We like that he left his native country and had experience acclimating to a new language, which leads us to believe his acclimation to the United States will be easier, not necessarily easy. But he still is far from a finished product as a player. Michael is what he is, right? Not to say he can't get better, everyone can. So there's a little bit of a difference there, and we evaluate a little bit differently, or we evaluate our risk tolerance against each a little bit differently. We are, I found a better word, Doug, than slow. We are very deliberate, okay? And I, you know, it had been customary to receive recommendations from agents, and now we're moving away from that. We'll never completely get away from it, nor should we, because there might be some good players that are brought to our attention. But we're starting to formulate our own lists through our own profiles. Individual meetings have to occur. Our international players, we have them take a profile that gives us a little bit of a measure of how they are. We like to know that because it helps us design our coaching for them. We believe that each individual needs to be coached in a very particular way, and knowing how they respond and what personality type they are is helpful in that regard. We would like to see an international player at least 3 times in person. We'd like to have at least 2 different people see that player live. So we're not just reliant on one set of eyes. There's video work that has to come before that, because there's an expense to going to see a player play. And so we'll do video work first, just to give us a notion that he has the characteristics that we like. But there is no substitute for that good old-fashioned eye. And then the last layer that we have to put into that is analytics. You know, what do the stats say about the player? And do they match up with what we're looking for? And if they don't, is that a product of when we get him, we're going to play him a little bit differently, or what we have around him is a little bit different? You're extrapolating a judgment there. But we will be deliberate. I'm willing to miss on a player. I don't want to miss on the person.
Given you've been around the league, you know, and now with being with the club now for a number of months, how familiar are you with what the club scouting process was previously, and what you guys are implementing now, and how different is that, and do you think it's a more successful method?
I don't know if it's more successful yet, because we don't have enough body of work, right? We only have this, if I could use a college phrase, this class that we brought in. And in that class, to me, includes Michael Harrington and Matt Lamson, and guys. Michael in particular was very important for me because he had been around winning programs. He knows how to win. He knows how to be patient with young players, but he knows how to demand and drive. And I think he's demonstrated all of that on the field, and he's been a great presence in the locker room. But just like I'm not ready to anoint Jonathan Campbell as our savior at center back. It's a long career. Drafts, you should probably evaluate drafts after 3 years, not after 3 weeks and the like. I tried to get a handle on what the recruiting was like prior. It left me unsatisfied. It led me to the decisions to make changes. It's led to Matt Pearson having this opportunity now to see if he can grow into being more than the scout, but the director of scouting, and build a program and a process and a department. I'm working with him on that because there's a lot of layers. You know, we still want to be able to recruit more younger players like Cham, who maybe we can help develop and have for a longer term, and or difference makers like we're hoping Michael will become for us. We need to do a better job of scouting for our academy, which is something that I didn't believe needed to be done. And through the double pass evaluation, I'm now convinced we need to do and will do. So it's too early for me to take out a trumpet and say we're doing it better than anybody or we're doing it great. It's still in a formative stage, and it still requires constant self-analysis and evaluation.
Everybody good?
One more.
One more?
You
Go ahead,
mentioned,
Guillermo. Of course, that's why we're here.
you mentioned analytics, and it's obviously more easier to quantify in other sports, and it's just starting to, I said, kind of flourish in soccer. What's your opinion on analytics, and how does it fire, and how do you use that to determine or make personnel decisions?
I see it as a point of information, just like 40-yard dash time is a point of information, just like the personality profiles that we give our international players is a point of information, just like a scout's report is a point of information. And all of those are little tiles that make up the mosaic of a player or the mosaic of a team. I use analytics a little bit differently for some aspects of my job than others. You know, whether that's evaluating a player or evaluating a player's value vis-a-vis what we're comfortable having them on the team salary budget against, or evaluating it as to trends to help find deficiencies in our team's performance or deficiencies in another, or strengths in our team or in another team's. So there's a few different ways that we look at using it. We have a gentleman who helps us on a part-time basis. I'm also very candid. I'm curious. I'm studying more to see. You know, I read like the Sounders have seven analytics guys, and I got to be honest, and I can be criticized for this, and I accept it. I didn't know that we needed 7 yet, right? And so we'll see what competitive advantage they glean out of that, and whether that's the model for us to follow or there's another one. But I think analytics has its place. And for me, the key part is to keep asking questions. Just keep asking questions and then see what the analytics produces. Does it marry up to what you believe your eye and your experience tells you? And if not, how do we adjust?
One more, I said one more.
Yeah.
We talked about over the last few months about your war chest of allocation money and how you use that over the next year or so. Do you see yourself maybe if something comes up during the window using that, or waiting till after the season to use it? Is there an expiration date on the end?
Those are really good questions. One, we still have resources, TAM and general allocation. We have used resources. We use resources to acquire Johan, as an example. And in the rules within MLS, we'll have to use some resources to buy down salary budget charges so that the team can fit. But we remain with sufficient resources that if we think a great opportunity does present itself, say in July, that we can capitalize on that. And we want to be nimble enough to be able to do that. The other part of, I prefer reserve to the war chest, is keeping the group together. You know, as we start to zero in on those guys that we want to keep together, this MLS pool of money, which not only helps acquire players, but it helps you keep your team together. Because the more successful you are, or the more individual players are successful, their salary budget charge exponentially starts to jump beyond just the 5% that you're allotted on a yearly basis. So those are the uses, but if the right opportunity came and we felt comfortable with it, we could and would move in that direction.
So you would theoretically have to keep some in reserve to use it on maybe someone like Kappelhoff again next year, since you did it last year?
In theory, yes. It's a jigsaw puzzle. It all depends on all the other pieces. But yes, and Michael will come into that equation as well because he's also a TAM player. Now, up front, we'll get a new tranche of money from Major League Soccer before the start of next year. But that's gone into our planning, right? And so that's why we are also trying to look at the January window to see what other pieces we might be able to incorporate at that time. Fair questions. Look, I appreciate your giving me the opportunity. I do. You don't have to do that. I thank those who stayed with us on the phone as well. And, we will do this again on a regular basis through Doug and his group. And you can always come to me with questions. So I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, Nelson.
Thanks a lot, Nelson.